Following on from last week, in verse 15, God answers the servant's prayer. Remember, we're talking about before it's finished, and it happened. Before he'd been speaking, basically. And Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, who was the son of Milcah and the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with a pitcher on her shoulder. That's the story. That's incredible when you think about it, that as this servant was talking, the actual thing comes to pass. Yeah. It says in Isaiah, it shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer, and while they are still speaking, I will hear. That is the kind of concept that we're talking about. Now, Rebekah is the person who comes out with a pitcher on her shoulder. That's not a pitcher, that's a water jug, not a framed photo. And the servant didn't know yet that the prayer was answered. Only time would prove it. This woman, Rebekah, was the granddaughter of Abraham's brother Nahor. As we go on and we look at verses 16 through 21, we see that the servant, though surprised, waits for complete confirmation of the prayer. Now it says this, now the young woman was very beautiful to behold, a virgin, no man had known her, and she went down to the well, filled her pitcher, and came up. And the servant ran to meet her and said, please, let me drink a little of the water from your pitcher. So she said, drink, my lord. And then she quickly let her pitcher down to her hand and gave him a drink. And when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking. Then she quickly emptied the pitcher into the trough and ran back to the well to draw water and drew for all his camels. And the man, wondering at her, remained silent so as to know whether the Lord had made his journey prosperous or not. Pretty freaky story, isn't it? These things happen sometimes when you do stuff with God. The young woman was very beautiful. And notice that it says that. We generally regard the Bible as given to understatement. So when we read she was very beautiful, she was an absolute babe is the only way we could describe it. And we should understand right throughout the rest of the story that Rebekah was indeed an amazing looking woman. Rebekah is one of the women whom the Bible specifically says is beautiful. The others are Sarah in Genesis 12, Rachel in Genesis 29, Abigail in 1 Samuel chapter 25, Bathsheba in 2 Samuel, Tamar in 2 Samuel, and Queen Vashti of the Persians in Esther 1, and Esther herself in Esther as well. And the daughters of Job were also called beautiful. Notice that the servant ran to meet her. The servant did not think it was unspiritual to introduce himself to Rebekah, yet he certainly didn't know anything to suggest that she would be the one providing the water for the camels. Prayer is no substitute for action when you think about it. And she drew water for all of his camels. Now, we don't exactly know how many, but there would have been a fair few because he had a whole lot of stuff with him. And Rebekah began to work, she began the hard work of watering all the camels. Then the servant didn't stop her. And it doesn't even say he helped her. He wanted a woman who would not only say that she would water the camels, but who would actually do the hard work. And he was amazed as he watched her. It says he was wondering at her. Perhaps Eliezer knew that for some, it is easier to talk like a servant than to actually serve. He wanted to see if she had a servant's heart, not only the servant's talk. In the next part of the passage, the servant Eliezer, when the bride had been chosen, gives her rich gifts, even before the marriage to Eliezer's boss's son. Here we go. So it was when the camels had finished drinking that the man took a golden nose ring weighing 1/2 shekel and 2 bracelets for their wrists weighing 10 shekels of gold and said, "Whose daughter are you? Tell me, please, is there room in your father's house for us to lodge?" So she said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, Milcah's son, whom she bore to Nahor. Moreover, she said, we have both straw and feed enough and room to lodge. Then the man bowed down his head and worshipped the Lord, and he said, Blessed be the Lord God of my master Abram, who has not forsaken his mercy and his truth towards my master. As for me, being on my way, the Lord led me to the house of my master's brethren. So the young woman ran and told her mother's household these things. Wow. So Eliezer waited for the camels to finish their drinking. Abraham's servant let Rebekah complete her job. Let her finish. But notice the gifts. A golden nose ring, that sounds very trendy these days, doesn't it? And 2 bracelets for her wrists, weighing 10 shekels of gold. In other words, they're thick and heavy things. After Rebekah fulfilled the sign that Abraham's servant had prayed for, he immediately reveals these gifts. This was a sign of his generosity and the wealth of his master that he represented. Then he starts to ask the questions, okay, whose daughter are you? Having already revealed the gifts. Now that may be a little bit backwards, that you maybe should do this in front of the parents. But here he does it straight up. The gifts indicated that Rebekah was the answer to the servant's prayer. He then asked about her family. And he praised God when he found out that the family was related to Abraham. Notice it says there, being on the way, the Lord led me. He uses this term. This showed the mentality of the servant. He felt it was his duty to do what God had asked him to do what Abraham had asked him to do, and to trust that God would guide him as he went. Yeah. It was as if this guidance process was just part of who he was. It wasn't put on. It was something that he had within him. And the young woman ran at the end of this passage and told her mother's household these things. It's easy to picture Rebekah's excitement. A day like that started out as any other day, but all of a sudden it's totally life-changing. Bless you.